Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is what we perceive to be a radical change in how Google, the search engine, is presenting results. It's moving away from those 10 blue links that we all relied on heavily to drive traffic to our website. And that format has been turned upside down. It's now AI summaries with some, references to the right-hand side, and it's highly disruptive. And I know that you're working with your clients to help them mitigate and take advantage of this change, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So this is the most disruptive thing I've seen on Google in my 21 years of being in SEO and search marketing. Nothing else has really even come that close. I would say Google Plus, which was, I think, launched about 12 years ago, it probably would have been pretty disruptive because the goal for Google Plus was for it to be personalized search experience, which is a lot of what this turns into, right? With AI. So back then Google was going to, or they were taking your data from your Google account. And when you use Chrome, and then they were serving up more personalized search experiences to people, which of course, from the SEO perspective is mind-bogglingly impossible to optimize for. So now we're finding ourselves in a very similar situation. AI or AI search, whatever you want to call it, is very much like that. So the average search query on Google is 4 to 5 words, and you can definitely corroborate that if you go into your own Google Search Console and you look at the queries that people are using to get to your site or anyone's site. You'll see that bears out over and over again. With AI search, Gemini, Perplexity, ChatGPT, they are really having a conversation like up to 24, 25, 26 words, optimizing for all of the conceivable permutations of 24 words combined together it's impossible. It's not something that you can possibly do. So this is not just a search conundrum. This is impacting the full buyer's journey. And I think this is the gap in knowledge for B2B marketers, is that we're all very proficient at, our go-to-market strategy and our personas and our ICP and the messaging being laid in with whatever the challenge is that we're trying to solve. This is the very beginning of the buyer's journey. If you look at Gartner's roadmap for the buying journey from 2019, there are about 11 touch points in the first 2 stages that are related to or entirely dependent upon search. And now that's going away. And so the term zero click means literally that. Someone is going to Google, they're performing a search, and then to your point, instead of clicking on one of those blue links that they used to go to a website and get more information, they're getting all the information they need right there on Google in the Gemini AI suggest. And then if you expand that section, then it really takes up the entire first page. So you have now, as an end user, this long list of information, related to whatever your query is, and every granular piece that is layered into that, you can then read more information. So end users don't even need to go to your website anymore. So it is, to say this is a massive upheaval, to say this is a massive upheaval in B2B marketing, I think is an understatement. This is probably the biggest thing that has happened since the advent of the internet itself.
So we've been talking offline for quite some time. Your concern is how organic search traffic to your clients' sites has dipped by, if I'm not mistaken, by up to 40%, I think you might have said. So as someone who's been in the corporate seat, right, where I relied very heavily on organic search, and I was paying SEO agencies $12,000-15,000 a month to get a couple of keywords at the top of Google. That's a very scary sort of proposition to be faced with. So I know you've been looking into the term, and I think it goes by different terms, but you've been calling it GEO, I think, generative engine optimization. That's the solution. It's kind of like the SEO, but the new version of SEO, GEO. What are you, to mitigate the top, middle, bottom funnel loss of traffic to your clients' websites. What are you looking at doing? I know that you talked about you're working on a new framework. Can you give us like a sense, an overview or summary of what that looks like?
Yeah, so it does go by multiple names because the industry is so new. So it
Mhm.
some instances it's called AI SEO, it might be AEO, it might be AIO or GEO, which stands for Generative Engine Optimization. And ultimately, you're looking at three different algorithms you're trying to solve for. So there's Google Gemini, there's ChatGPT, and there's Perplexity. There's also other engines out there. There's Claude, there's Llama, there's Grok. The list goes on and on and on. But the three big ones are going to be Gemini, ChatGPT, and Perplexity. And they each have different crawlers, quote unquote, spiders, whatever you want to call them, that pull in the information, and then their algorithms are based on different criteria. So Google's algorithm is not entirely dependent upon their traditional organic results. There are a lot of nuance there, and there's definitely a different approach that is going to be required to be able to compete in that section. And that section is pretty robust too. If you click into that when you perform what we call a discovery or a commercial search, which is they're not looking for a brand, someone's looking for a solution, product or a service to solve a challenge that they might have. That's a commercial search. And if you perform one of those and you look at the Gemini AI suggest section, when you expand it, it'll have some citations over to the right, and then it'll have a long list of different pieces related to that overall search query that you performed. Sometimes there are links, sometimes there are not. And it's really impossible to predict when. So in terms of competing on Google, which is still far and away the biggest engine to drive new business for B2B organizations. So between brand and discovery, Google is really overwhelmingly still the giant in the room and the main area of focus. So you'll start at the top with the page section, which have also become more robust. So the top paid listing now has the ability to serve up site links that really take up almost the entire screen when they first load. And then they might have up to 4 sponsored links. And then below that is the AI suggest, the Gemini area. And then below that is the traditional organic section. So if you don't expand the Gemini section, the traditional organic results are still there. And you can move into those and you still see traffic from those, but not nearly as much as you did even 3 months ago. So now Google is really ramping up inserting the AI suggest section into their search results. Don't see it. I haven't seen it much in brand search. Will that happen? Who knows? That's anyone's guess. But what we do see is that cost per click or CPCs are going up dramatically and very, very quickly, because the competition is really starting to lean into trying to monetize the sponsored section at the top of Google. So when you talk about trying to optimize for the Gemini section, a lot of different components go into that. And a big part of that is going to be content, really, really, really deep, rich, meaningful content. And for B2B marketers, that's not traditionally what you see on websites. You see more shallow content, but a lot of assets, white papers, buyer's guides, case studies. Those things are traditionally going to be gated because you want that information. That's the cost, is your name and your email address, your title, who you work for, et cetera. And that's not going to work anymore. If you try and hide that information because you're intending to get an MQL or that person's information, you're just not going to see the results that you've seen in the past. You're not going to see, number one, you're seeing fewer people come to your site organically. And from that perspective, they don't need your white paper. They don't need your buyer's guide. That information is all available now on these AI search engines. And so they don't have to give you their information to get that anymore, which is a big, big change for B2B marketers. And I think that's the tip of the iceberg, quite frankly.
Yeah, you're spot on. I'm thinking of all the different ways that, people who interact with LLMs, whichever one is your choice, the zero click, and when you perform like a search query on Gemini or ChatGPT, you tend, as you said, to write a longer description of what you're looking for. I think we're all becoming more trained with the fact that, hey, add context, add more detailed information, you will get a far greater, better result. And I think now that's evolving into conversations. It's not just a search and here's the link. Now I'm actually having a conversation with the LLM. Oh, that's good information. How about this? And it's an ongoing, dialogue in real time with the LLM, which introduces a whole other sort of set of situations. I think it's also important to note that all these LLMs, have been trained, but they also now have access to the web. So the data that they have is stored, but they can also search in real time as well. So it's not like content optimization is dead, to your point. It's like, how do you make it available to the LLM, and how do you make the LLM learn and understand what kind of content this is? Because you can actually shape how the LLM understands your content, and you can also influence it if you do it in the right way. So it's, to your point, it's turning into a completely different sort of engagement and partnership with these LLMs and the search engines within the LLMs, right?
Yeah, you really hit on a super important point, which is you want to be able to have some type of control over what shows up. What does ChatGPT or Perplexity say about your business? How do they say it? And in the traditional sense of SEO, you had the meta title and the meta description. And so the meta title was typically what you use to help Google know what keywords you're trying to compete for, essentially. And the meta description was really what you wanted to try and have Google say about your business. Why would somebody want to click on that link to come to your website? And now, to your point, it's so massively complicated and complex. But the things that have worked in the past from an SEO perspective are still very, very important. If you think about the technical side of SEO, so the on-site piece, how is your content structured? Your robot text file, or in this instance, your LLM text file. Are you using schema markup on your content? Are you using the proper correct syntax and synonyms for things? And all of this stuff is absolutely super critical. And so you take that and then you layer in the content marketing piece that you mentioned, which is now you really just have to give away your content for free. And it has to be really, really, really deep, meaningful, expert content. Obviously, you don't want to give away any of your IP, the secret formula behind the whatever your business model is, but you want to go right up to that line as much as you can and really differentiate yourself from who the competitors are. And then the other piece that is going to be a steep curve for, I guess, the smaller businesses in these different industries and segments is that the large, massive organizations have a competitive advantage again. Whereas with traditional SEO, you could compete with like a Salesforce or a HubSpot or whatever. Now they have a distinct competitive advantage because a lot of the citations that these LLMs look for are going to be coming from those really hard to get sources. Wikipedia, for instance. So having a Wikipedia page is really big for Perplexity. ChatGPT and Perplexity both actually rely on Bing search results, which is interesting because everyone has really kind of historically looked at Bing as that's okay if I get some traffic,
Right.
and if I don't, I'm not really worried about it.
Yeah.
It's meaningful again, and then news sources. So if you can get mentions or a lot of mentions from those really, really high value news sources that are hard to, you really can't pay for those. So PR is going to be a big part of the strategy. Content marketing is a big part of the strategy. Technical, on-site is really a big part of the strategy. And so I think the organizations that are going to be successful are going to be really good at breaking down the silos inside of their organization, because this isn't a nice to have. This is a opportunity that organizations, large B2B organizations, need to be seizing on. And what I mean by that is the whole B2B buying journey is changing. Everything about how your customers are looking for you online is going to change, and how they make those buying decisions has already changed massively. And now it's really going to be imperative for organizations to come up with experiences on their website that are something that an LLM can't really replicate. So give your end users a reason to come to your site that they can't get from an LLM. That's a strategy that we see organizations starting to adapt to, focusing on in-person events again, making sure that your name is out there in the real world, not just online. And then, of course, ABM, in my opinion, is really the secret formula behind all of this, because you take an ABM approach of the full funnel: awareness, consideration, validation, and evaluation. And then you take your ICP, you segment it by industry, and then the personas inside of those. That's a recipe for success in terms of the actual content. So if you start to create those experiences on your website, not just, really that personalization that we all know about from the ABM perspective, but if you adopt that in terms of the construction of your website and the content, that is going to give you a distinct competitive advantage with the LLMs.
Yeah. Lots of really good stuff there. And by the way, anyone watching, I wanted to just say that this is the first of many different discussions you and I are going to have. So if people want to learn more and they want to dive deeper into this and actually get a roadmap, we're going to jump much deeper into those topics as we, continue this conversation. I had one final question for you. If you're a CMO or a CRO or even a CEO and you happen to be watching this right now, what would you say is the first step within an organization to start getting in front of this?
The first step in the direction of getting your arms around this is going to be understanding how impacted you already have been by what's changed on Google. And I think it's important to really note there's two distinct pieces, but they're absolutely connected. What is happening on Google isn't necessarily always something that a CEO or a CRO are concerned about, because we've really gotten spoiled in the B2B marketing space, B2B in general, because Google Organic, if you think about it, like there's never been anything like Google Organic before. It's the only thing that I can think of that really conveys how impactful it is. Just imagine if television stations like NBC or ABC gave away free network advertising, and then you could pay for a premium spot, and that's how they made their money. But for all intents and purposes, you got free television advertising and people came to your business because of that, and you grew your business on that. That's Google Organic. You don't pay Google to show up in the organic section. To your point, you might pay an agency or hire internal people to facilitate that in the past. And SEO isn't dead. You'll still want to focus on SEO without a doubt. But the first step is to really understand, how has your business been impacted by these changes on Google? And I would say the first area to focus on are those discovery and commercial searches, the ones that imply that someone's looking for a service or product that you provide, to see how much that's changed. And then you want to look at your conversions. How much have your conversions dropped off? Those form submissions where people are saying, hey, I want to speak to a salesperson. That's the first step to understand. And then the next piece is to really start to get your arms around, how do Gemini, Perplexity, and ChatGPT talk about your business? How do they mention your brand? Are you competitive across all of the different ways people might be prompting one of these LLMs? Or are you only visible for a very small section of what it is you do? And then you can start to begin to figure out what is your response to that. Because the biggest concern, if I were a CEO or a CRO at a major enterprise organization right now, my biggest concern would be, I have no insight into the beginning of the B2B buyer's journey anymore. A lot of, in the past, a lot of it has been happening outside of your perspective. Now, almost all of it is. And so what we are hearing from organizations and we're seeing firsthand is that the buyers now actually come to the table when they're ready, and they know more than the salespeople do. And that's a pretty massive change in the dynamic. In the past, as a seller, you had the opportunity in many early stages to have an influence over what happens in that buyer's journey. You can, when people came in and they asked for a demo because they needed to get up to speed on your product and they wanted to start to compare vendors early on in their process, you had a unique opportunity to be able to really position your product or service as the best among the competitors. And now that is really in the hands of the LLMs. They're going to be the ones, for better or for worse, that are going to let people know, hey, this is these are the top 2 vendors, top 3 vendors in this space. And that is going to be a much, much more difficult situation for large organizations to solve after the facts. Early adopter and early change is critical because it's going to take 12, 18, 24 months to really break down these silos and institute a framework across the whole organization that's going to lead to success. If you wait 12 months, you're already behind the curve. And so I would say if you're a CEO or a CRO and you're seeing this right now, you should really be concerned and you should really start to pay a lot of attention to what's happening on the website right now.
Are you comfortable with me talking about the tool that you have?
Yeah, we can talk
So
about that. Yeah,
I was
we can talk
gonna,
about that.
yeah, and I was going
Yeah.
to bring up, hey, do you want to just really quickly talk about the tool that you have that people can leverage? And would you be comfortable if I also mentioned that, hey, to access that tool, there's a link in the description or not? You tell me.
Yeah, so we're gonna the GEO page, services page will be hopefully live soon on our website, and it's gonna have a link if you want to get an analysis. It's gonna allow people to input their information. So basically, what we're gonna do is offer a free analysis. You give us 3 of your top keywords, and then
Yeah.
we'll do the research to figure out what are the prompts that people are using, and then give visibility across those 3 search engines
Okay.
so that
So,
yeah, we can definitely talk about that and let people know that
yeah,
have the ability to get a visibility report.
I think we absolutely should. I mean,
Yeah.
so I'll start to ask you the question. So Vincent, I know that ABMA, the agency, your agency of which you are the president, you've built a tool that will do an audit for you. Can you explain what that tool is and how people could take advantage of it?
Yeah. So we are offering generative engine optimization as a service to our existing clients and other large B2B organizations that are out there. And we are offering a free visibility report that will be also part of obviously the ongoing services to be able to track the visibility of really important prompts across those 3 major LLMs. But at least for the foreseeable future, we're offering a glimpse of what that looks like to organizations that want to have a sense of what their visibility looks like across those 3 major LLMs. And so they can go to abmagency.com and there'll be a pop-up that will prompt them to add in some keywords and give us their information. And we'll do some research. We'll add those keywords in that will then output in the form of prompts that are currently visible on those LLMs. And then we can provide the visibility report to the organization to help them to understand where are they currently in this new universe, right? And so again, I would say traditional SEO is not dead. One thing that I've always seen from Google in the past is that they'll go, both feet into a change and then they'll back it up depending on, how things rolled out with their algorithm change. I don't think this is that. I don't think that we're ever going to see Google take the AI suggest out of their search results. So I think it's going to be a matter of traditional SEO is important. This new GEO or generative engine optimization is absolutely super critical for organizations. Are seeing Perplexity and ChatGPT are taking away some search, huge. Google still owns a vast majority of that. People still use Google, but we're seeing more adoption across those other 2 LLMs. So if you go to our site, abmagency.com, fill in the information, we can get you a visibility report. And then from there, depending on what your path forward looks like, we can gladly assist you in trying to formulate what your roadmap is and give you the help and support you need to institute our framework to be able to be competitive in this new AI first B2B buyers journey universe.
Yeah, awesome. I'm sure it's a great resource. Okay, and we'll definitely put a link in the description. So if anyone just wants to access it very, very quickly, just check out the description. And I do want to just repeat one more time that you and I, this is the start of many conversations that we're going to have. We're going to look at things both strategically as well as very tactically. We want this to be a good resource for folks if they want to really understand how they can get in front of the changes that are happening, especially as it relates to the buyer's journey. It's a 180 and it's coming. It's already started. Your client, you see the data with your clients' websites and the changes in organic traffic. So anyway, good talking to you. We'll chat some more, I'm sure, very soon.
Thanks, Ronan. Enjoyed
All
it.
right. Thanks. Bye.